It was my first morning in the new house. No dishes in the sink, no buzzing notifications, no one walking across the floor above me. Just silence, the good kind, the kind that hums in your ears and reminds you that you're finally somewhere that's yours. I walked barefoot through the hallway, coffee in hand, still in the oversized t-shirt I wore to bed. The hardwood floors were cool beneath my feet, the sunlight warm across my shoulders. The house wasn't big. It didn't have to be. It was clean, open, and quiet. There were still boxes stacked in the corners, curtains not yet hung, but the keys were on the hook by the door. And for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't just staying somewhere. I belonged. I was mid-sip, standing at the window, watching a bird hop across the fence post, when my phone buzzed. One new message. From Trey, a cousin I hadn't seen in months, maybe even a year. Yo, cuz, random question. Any chance you've got a couch or spare room? Just for 2 to 3 days. Me and Jace got stuck between leases. I stared at the screen. I hadn't even unpacked my bathroom stuff yet. My towels were still sealed in plastic. I hadn't had time to figure out how to turn on the oven without triggering the smoke alarm. And already, someone needed something. I looked at the message again. Just 2 to 3 days. They always say that. I didn't answer right away. I turned back to the coffee pot, poured myself another half cup, and let the silence sink in again. But even as I sipped, I knew I'd probably say yes, because I always do. They showed up the next evening, not with backpacks, not with duffels, but with luggage, the kind with wheels that squeak, bursting at the seams with more than 2 or 3 nights' worth of anything. I opened the door and blinked. Trey stood front and center, his ever-present grin in place. Behind him, Jace, chewing gum like it was a lifestyle, and Dion, who I hadn't even known was part of this plan. Surprise, Trey said, like this was a game show. Hope it's okay we brought Dion too. His situation's a little messy right now. I glanced down. 5 suitcases, 2 duffels, 1 grocery bag full of snacks, 1 mystery tote that looked like it hadn't been zipped in a decade. Oh, sure, I said, stepping aside slowly. The words came out of my mouth like muscle memory. Of course, I said yes. What was I gonna do? Tell my cousins to leave? To take their 5 bags and their wide smiles back into the night? They shuffled in without hesitation, claiming the couch, the floor, and, somehow, the kitchen counter. You're a lifesaver, Jace said, already plugging his phone into my only outlet by the door. We'll be out of your hair real soon, Trey added. Starting work tomorrow, actually. Tomorrow. That magical word people use when they don't want to say never. I offered them some leftover pizza, and they offered me the illusion that this was temporary, that they were grateful, that this wouldn't become a thing. But I knew better. By the time the night ended, one had taken the guest room, one was on the couch with the TV on full volume, and the third was snoring on a yoga mat I didn't know I still owned. The house didn't feel like mine anymore, and tomorrow, that promise they tossed so casually into the air, never showed up. By the end of the first week, I couldn't find my own coffee mug, the one with the chipped handle and faded print that said, "Introverts Unite," separately. It had vanished somewhere between Dion's endless snacking and Jace's sudden passion for making smoothies at 6 a.m. My fridge looked like it had been raided by a pack of teenagers on a dare. Milk, gone. Eggs, cracked. Carton, empty. Half a rotisserie chicken I was saving for lunch, disappeared, and in its place, energy drinks, leftover fast food, a half-eaten banana someone had the nerve to put back. I started keeping a bottle of water in my bedroom like I was back in a college dorm. The bathroom wasn't any better. Towels damp and strewn over every surface, one mysteriously hanging from the shower rod that definitely wasn't mine. I was down to a single clean one, which I now hid in my closet, between wares like it was classified intel. The living room had transformed into a co-working nightmare. Trey had claimed the dining table as his office, though I never saw him actually working. Jace parked himself on the couch with his laptop, always editing beats, which mostly sounded like explosions and static. And Dion, somehow, was just always there, eating, talking on speakerphone, or snoring. Even my bedroom, the one sacred space I had left, was no longer safe. The walls were too thin. Their laughter, their YouTube binges, their late-night phone calls bled into my sleep. Every corner of the house felt occupied. Even when I was alone in a room, I wasn't really alone. I could still feel the weight of their things, the mess, the noise. I used to imagine hosting brunch here, meals with friends, sunlight through the window, soft music in the background. Now, I was cooking breakfast for 12 invisible people and eating cereal over the sink like a ghost. And not a single one of them had said, "Do you want us to go?" I came home late one night after a long day, one of those days where the only thing that keeps you going is the promise of your own bed and a room that smells like quiet. Instead, I walked into chaos, laughter, music, the smell of microwaved pizza rolls, and two people I had never seen in my life sitting comfortably on my couch. One of them was barefoot, eating from my cereal bowl. The other was holding my throw pillow like it was a cherished family heirloom. They didn't flinch when I walked in, didn't even pause the music. They looked at me like I was interrupting them. Before I could ask anything, Trey popped out of the kitchen with a Red Bull in one hand and a bag of popcorn in the other. "Oh, hey," he said casually. "This is Marcus and Talia. They just needed a place to crash for a night or two. Talia's roommate kicked her out or something." Jace from across the room chimed in, "Don't worry, they're chill." I stood frozen, keys still in my hand, staring at this ever-growing cast of strangers populating the house I signed for, paid for, and dreamed about in sleepless apartment nights. "They're chill," he said. That was the defense. No one asked if I was okay with it. No one offered to call ahead next time. No one even pretended to care that this was, by all definitions, a home, not a 24/7 youth hostel. I forced a smile, a tight, brittle thing that I knew didn't reach my eyes. "Oh," I said, "cool." But it wasn't. It wasn't cool. It was another line crossed, another inch of space taken without permission. And it confirmed what I already feared. This wasn't a temporary favor anymore. It was an invasion disguised as family. And I was rapidly becoming a guest in my own home. I had been quiet, patient. I told myself this was just a phase, that people need help sometimes, that family is family, even when they forget that walls, space, and silence are sacred. I swallowed my irritation, bit down on my tongue. Let the towels go missing, let the food vanish, let the noise seep through the floorboards and into my dreams. But then came the mug. It was nothing special to anyone else. Just a slightly chipped ceramic cup with faded flowers on the side. The handle had a crack. The glaze had worn thin, but it had been mine since college. It was mine. It had seen me through final exams and rainy mornings, through heartbreaks and half-finished poems, through years of microwaved instant coffee in quiet victories I never shared with anyone. And that morning, it was in the trash, in two pieces, casually tossed between an empty energy drink and a greasy napkin. The flower pattern split down the middle like a wound. I pulled it out slowly, my fingers dusted in ceramic powder. The pieces clinked together softly in my palm like they were apologizing. Jace walked by, glanced at the mug, and shrugged. Oh yeah, that thing broke earlier. I think Trey knocked it off the counter by accident. No apology, no hint of regret. No one even paused the video game they were playing. They had broken something that mattered to me and treated it like a paper plate. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. It wasn't rage, it wasn't sadness, it was clarity. They weren't just overstepping, they weren't just taking space. They were treating me, my time, my boundaries, my things, with the same careless hands they used on my mug. Disposable, replaceable, background. I set the pieces gently back in the trash, washed my hands in silence, and poured myself a new cup of coffee into a plain white mug from the back of the cabinet. And as the steam rose, so did a decision. One I wouldn't announce, one I wouldn't explain, one they wouldn't see coming. But it had begun. That night, I decided to talk. Not explode, not accuse. Just talk. I waited until everyone was in the living room, half watching a show, half scrolling on their phones. It smelled like takeout and damp socks. I stood near the hallway, arms crossed, heart steady. Can we talk for a minute? I said. 3 heads turned. A fourth, Marcus, I think, didn't even bother. I took a breath. This is my house, I began, calm, clear. I welcomed you here because you said you needed a place for a few days. That was almost 3 weeks ago. Trey looked at me like I had just spoken a language he couldn't quite translate. Yeah, and we're super grateful, he said quickly. Really. Jace chimed in. It's just been hard, you know. Jobs fell through. Dion's car broke down. We're figuring it out. I nodded. I get that. I really do. But none of you have said anything about when you're planning to leave. A pause. An uncomfortable one. Dion scratched the back of his neck. It's just temporary. That word again. Temporary. A word people use when they don't want to commit to leaving, but know they've stayed too long. Do you have a date in mind? I asked. They all glanced at each other, as if the exit strategy was someone else's responsibility. Well, Trey started, we were thinking maybe end of the month? It was the 4th. Of next month? No one said. I felt the familiar twinge of being managed, not heard, of being tolerated in my own home like a landlord with no lease. I nodded slowly. Okay. I didn't argue, didn't plead, because I knew this conversation was going nowhere. They weren't planning to leave. They weren't even pretending anymore. They just hoped I'd stay quiet long enough for their next excuse. But this time, my silence wasn't surrender. It was a setup. That night, I didn't sleep in my own bed. Again, I had just turned off the kitchen light and was heading down the hall when Trey casually stepped out of the bathroom, toothbrush in hand, and said, Hey, you mind if I crash in your room tonight? I gotta be up super early, and the couch creaks like hell. He said it like it was a favor, like I was lucky to be giving up my own space. I blinked at him, stunned by the smoothness of it all. There was no question in his voice, no hesitation, just a statement wrapped in fake politeness. Sure, I said, because I didn't know what else to say. And just like that, he slipped into my room and shut the door behind him. I stood in the hallway, holding a blanket I'd brought out for myself, unsure whether I wanted to scream or laugh. I slept on the floor of the guest room. No pillow, just a throw cushion from the couch that smelled faintly like takeout and Axe body spray. I stared at the ceiling for hours, the shadows of my own furniture stretching across unfamiliar walls. My bed, my actual bed, the one I had spent months saving up for, choosing the frame, the mattress, the sheets with the perfect thread count, was behind that closed door. Used, claimed, taken. All because someone decided they needed it more than I did. And somehow, I let them. I curled tighter under the blanket, staring at the ceiling fan above me, and whispered a truth I hadn't been ready to say out loud. This isn't just about space anymore. They weren't just overstaying, they were occupying. And I had been giving them keys to parts of me they had no right to enter. That was the night I stopped trying to keep the peace. Because what's the point of peace if you have nowhere left to sleep? At some point, my home stopped being a home. It became a service station, a free hotel, a silent machine that kept functioning no matter how many buttons they pushed or how much they drained it. Packages started arriving with names that weren't mine. Shoeboxes, gaming accessories, gym supplements, all shipped to my address as if it were a distribution center. Food orders showed up daily, sometimes twice a day. The front steps turned into a revolving door of delivery drivers, Uber Eats, DoorDash, random dudes with paper bags, and too loud music playing in their cars. No one ever tipped. No one ever cleaned up the mess. They used my Netflix profile like it was their birthright. My name, Gabrielle, sat beneath a string of shows I never watched. Action movies, loud sitcoms, endless sports documentaries. My carefully curated algorithm? Gone. Even my food card, something I rarely used, somehow got passed around. I found it in the kitchen one day, next to a crumpled Chipotle receipt and an empty drink cup with someone else's name on it. I asked once, just once, who had used it. Jay shrugged. Oh, I thought it was like a house thing. A house thing. My money, my groceries, my streaming account, my doorbell, my living room, my peace. Apparently all part of the house thing. It wasn't malicious. That's what made it worse. They truly didn't see it. They didn't see how every click, every charge, every careless assumption chipped away at something invisible. My right to exist without being consumed. They weren't mean. They were entitled. And I was done letting them take what they didn't even realize was mine. It happened in the hallway. I was dragging a bag of trash, filled with takeout containers I didn't order and packaging from electronics I didn't buy, when Mrs. Kennedy, my upstairs neighbor, stepped out of her apartment. She's lived in the building for over 20 years. The kind of neighbor who bakes muffins around the holidays and remembers your cat's name. "Morning, Gabrielle," she said kindly, tucking her mail under one arm. I smiled back, tired. "Morning." She hesitated, just for a second, then leaned in the tiniest bit, lowering her voice like she was about to hand over state secrets. "I don't mean to pry," she whispered, "but are those boys living with you now?" I blinked. "Excuse me?" She gestured vaguely toward the floor, toward my unit. "I just wasn't sure. I've seen them coming and going, and they've got guests, packages, food deliveries, almost like it's their place. I assumed maybe it was temporary, but it's been a while, hasn't it?" I stood frozen for a beat, bag still in my hand. I had told myself it wasn't a big deal, that I was just helping out. that I could tolerate it for a little longer, that this was still my home. But hearing it from someone else, from outside the bubble, hit different. They looked like they lived here. Not visitors, not guests, residents. The realization landed sharp and cold. Mrs. Kennedy wasn't judging. She was concerned, but her question made something click in my mind that I had refused to admit out loud. They weren't acting like guests, because I wasn't acting like the owner. I managed a weak smile. "It's temporary," I said softly. Her eyes were kind, but unconvinced, and in that moment, I knew. Temporary was over. That night, I opened my laptop with a kind of calm I hadn't felt in weeks. Not rage, not spite, just clarity. The kind that comes when you finally stop hoping people will change and start changing the rules of the game instead. I opened Google, typed slowly, deliberately, professional moving truck services, one-way destinations. The screen lit up with ads, options, services that promised speed, silence, and no questions asked. I clicked the first 3 links, compared rates, checked availability. Most had online booking. I smiled. That was convenient. I kept the tab open and switched to maps. Zoomed out of the city, out of the state. Looked at highways and rest stops. Calculated how far someone could go in one day. If they were packed and ready by morning. They wouldn't be. Not really. But they didn't need to know that yet. I opened a new tab and made a checklist. Large moving truck. 2 men arrive early morning. Pack only marked items, deliver to address. Provided don't contact sender. The silence in the apartment was heavy. Trey was probably in the living room watching reruns. Jace had music pulsing through the walls. Dion was half asleep with his shoes still on, one sock hanging off the edge of the couch. And me? I was planning an exit, just not mine. It felt strange to plan this without anger, but I wasn't doing this to punish them. I was doing it to reclaim something. Space, sanity, self. And for once, I wasn't asking permission. I was making a reservation. It was Jace who said it first, casually, over his 3rd plate of scrambled eggs that morning. "We might be heading out of town next week," he said between bites. "Thinking of crashing at Marcus's beach house for a bit. Kinda need a change of scene, you know?" Trey chimed in from the couch. "Yeah, maybe just for a week or 2. Chill, reset. Clear our heads." I stood at the sink, rinsing a pan they'd left soaking overnight in exactly 1 inch of cold, oily water. "A change of scene," I repeated, trying not to laugh. Dion wandered into the kitchen, already shirtless and scratching his head. "What's up?" "We're thinking beach trip," Jace said, grinning. "Oh yeah, definitely need that," Dion replied, as if he was the one who'd been picking up after other people for a month. I turned to them with a smile. Not fake, just quiet. "That's great," I said. "You'll want to start packing soon then." Trey shrugged. "We'll throw stuff together last minute, probably." I dried my hands on a towel and looked them over, casually, slowly. "Just make sure you label everything clearly," I said. "You wouldn't want the movers to take the wrong boxes." There was a pause. Jace blinked. "Movers?" I smiled wider. "Oh, didn't I mention? I've got a truck coming next week. Some things are shifting around here." No one asked for details. They assumed it had nothing to do with them. And I let them assume. Because nothing hides the truth better than letting people believe their own lie. They wanted vacation vibes? Perfect. Let them pack. The reservation took less than 10 minutes. No questions asked. No calls. No one to explain myself to. A few clicks, a confirmed time, and a line at the bottom that said, "Arrival, 7:45 a.m., one way." It felt almost too easy. Under load details, I wrote simply, "Miscellaneous personal items, apartment clear out." Not wrong. I used a burner email, paid up front, selected the no call before arrival box. They'd show up, they'd load what I told them to, and they'd drive. Where? That was already decided. The address I gave was 2 hours away, a small town with a storage facility that didn't ask for ID at drop-off. I'd already reserved a unit under a fake name. Let them figure that part out later. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was methodical. For weeks, I'd been outnumbered in my own home, outvoiced, outclaimed, like my name on the lease meant nothing compared to their noise, their presence, their entitled comfort. But they forgot one thing. I still controlled the door. And now, I controlled the truck. That night, I tucked the confirmation email into a private folder and cleared the browser history. I sat back, listened to Jace arguing with someone on his headset, and let the chaos hum around me one last time. Because soon, that chaos would have wheels. The truck pulled up at 7:42 a.m., right on schedule. I was already dressed, standing by the window with a cup of coffee in hand. The driver stepped out, checked the clipboard, and nodded toward the building. Right on cue, 3 loud knocks followed, sharp, official, not like a friend, like a deadline. Jace opened the door, still half asleep, shirtless, squinting. Can I help you?" The driver smiled politely. "Moving crew. We're here to load out." Jace blinked. "Load what?" By the time Trey joined him at the door, I was already behind them, calm as ever. "Morning," I said. "Don't worry, it's just for the renovation." Trey furrowed his brow. "Renovation?" "Yeah," I nodded. "Whole unit's getting a flooring update, plumbing inspection. Real minor, but they have to clear everything out. City ordinance, short-term thing." There was silence. Then Dion appeared behind them, hair wild, holding a bag of chips at 8 a.m. "Wait, what's going on?" "The house needs a little work," I said again, as casually as someone reading a weather report. "Should only take a few days, maybe a week. Movers will pack everything and drop it where it needs to go. Don't worry, I've arranged it all." That word hit them. Everything. Trey looked over at the movers, 2 guys in matching polos, already bringing in crates and tape guns. "Wait, you mean our stuff too?" I met his eyes. "Yes, yours too." Jace's mouth opened, then closed. Dion looked down at the chips in his hand, like they were suddenly fragile. And for the first time since they'd arrived, I saw it. Panic, not loud, not dramatic, but in the way Trey scratched his arm, in the way Jace stepped back, like the floor was no longer his. They weren't used to being the ones who had to move. But I was done moving around them. The night before the truck arrived, the house was louder than usual. Jace had friends over, again. Trey was showing someone how to hook up a projector in my living room. Dion fell asleep with his phone blaring on the coffee table, the screen lighting up every few seconds with useless notifications. I didn't say a word. I just waited. And when the last door closed and the snoring began to echo through the thin walls, I got to work. I started with the hallway. Shoes, jackets, random piles of junk mail with names that weren't mine. Into the boxes they went. The guest room came next. Dion's clothes were everywhere. On the bed, on the dresser, under the nightstand. I packed it all, folded nothing. I wrapped up the gaming console Jace had installed under my TV, the one he said he'd only use occasionally. packed up the tangled wires like a trap I was disarming. Their toiletries, their dishes, their temporary piles of clutter in the corners, all of it, boxed, labeled, stacked by the door. No one stirred. They didn't hear the tape gun, didn't question the shifting shadows in the hallway, didn't notice the house slowly emptying of everything that wasn't mine. Because in their minds, they still owned the space, still thought they were the center of it all. They had built their comfort on my silence, on the belief that I'd always be accommodating, always be available. And while they dreamed, while they drooled into pillows I had paid for, I stripped away every inch of false comfort they had wrapped themselves in, not as revenge, but as reality. Morning was coming, and with it, the end of their version of the story. By 8:15 a.m., the truck was loaded, boxes taped, bags sealed, comforts removed. I handed the driver the clipboard with a small smile and a simple instruction. Drop-off address is on the last page. He nodded without asking questions. I had paid for discretion. They stood there, Trey, Jace, Dion, on the curb in hoodies and confusion, watching their belongings disappear into the back of the truck like something surreal was unfolding in front of them. "You sure this is the right place?" Jace asked, squinting at the printed label. I didn't blink. Yep. They exchanged glances, uneasy for the first time. None of them knew the destination, but I did. Maple Ridge, a sleepy beach town 3 hours south. Their mother's vacation house. The one they used to brag about every summer. The one that always had extra rooms and felt like home. Good. Let them live out their nostalgia. Let them play grown-up in a place with plastic patio furniture and no Wi-Fi. It was their style. Inherited comfort. No bills. No boundaries. They'd be fine. But they wouldn't be here. They wouldn't be in my space. As the truck rolled away, tires crunching over the gravel, I felt no guilt. Just air. Finally moving freely through the walls of a house that had been choked by entitlement for too long. Jace mumbled something. Trey tried to laugh. Dion started typing aggressively on his phone. I didn't care. The truck turned the corner, and just like that, they were out. Not evicted, redirected. Somewhere fitting, somewhere far, somewhere that wasn't mine. The silence was immediate. Not awkward, not tense. Just pure. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, the house actually sounded like a house. No bass shaking the walls, no distant laughter echoing from the living room, no arguing over who ate the last slice of pizza. Just the soft hum of the fridge, the gentle tick of the wall clock, and the faint rustle of Jupiter stretching on the windowsill. I stood in the kitchen, barefoot on the cool tile, holding a clean mug, my clean mug. I brewed tea the way I liked it. Loose leaf. 2 minutes steeped. Splash of honey, no lemon. No one breathing down my neck asking if I had oat milk. No one opening the fridge behind me mid-pour. I sat at the table. My table. No scattered keys or shoes underneath. No takeout bags shoved to the side. I took a sip, and I breathed. Not the shallow kind of breath you take when you're tense, but trying not to show it. A full one. The kind that goes all the way down to your stomach and tells your body, you're safe now. There were still marks on the walls. A scratch on the floor from a suitcase dragged too roughly. A faint smell of cologne in the hallway. But it didn't matter. The air was mine again. The space was mine again. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I was alone. By choice. The calls started around noon. First Trey, then Jace, then Dion, twice in a row. When I didn't pick up, the voicemails began. Yo, Gabrielle, what did you do? Where's our stuff? This is so messed up. You didn't even warn us. We thought we were family. Is this supposed to be funny? You crossed a line. This is straight up disrespectful. Each one more frantic than the last. Each one a variation of the same question. How dare you take your house back? I let the phone ring. I let it buzz. I let them fill up the voicemail box like kids throwing rocks at a brick wall, thinking maybe it would fall if they yelled loud enough. It didn't. I didn't. There were no threats, no insults, just indignation, pure, entitled disbelief. Like I had broken some unspoken rule, the one where I was supposed to keep giving, keep hosting, keep making room for people who never made room for me. I sat on the couch with my tea, listening to Jupiter purr from the armrest. My phone lit up again. I turned it face down on the table. I didn't feel guilty, not even a little, because what they wanted wasn't an explanation. They wanted access, and they'd lost it. The moment they decided my space was theirs. The moment they mistook my kindness for permission. They made a choice. I simply responded. Quietly. Effectively. Finally. They showed up 2 days later. Mid-afternoon knock, sharp, impatient. Then another, louder. I stayed on the couch, mug in hand, blanket over my legs, unmoved. The knocks turned into a rhythm. 3. Pause. 3 more. Like if they hit the door just right, it would change its mind. It didn't. Neither did I. Jupiter sat by the window, watching their shadows shift on the porch. His tail flicked once, lazily. He didn't meow. He didn't move. He didn't even give them the courtesy of acknowledgement. Honestly, that was the most satisfying part. Trey's voice came through the door, muffled but frantic. Gabrielle, come on, let's talk. Number. Then Jace, we just want to grab a few things. That's it. Everything you left is already gone. Dion muttered something I couldn't make out. Probably another guilt trip. Another plea for empathy that had never once gone both ways. I didn't answer. I didn't move. I had spent weeks shrinking inside this house, folding myself smaller and smaller while they spread out, took up space, treated me like wallpaper. Now? They were outside, knocking, waiting, and I was inside, whole, quiet, free. Eventually, the knocking stopped. Eventually, they walked away. Jupiter blinked at the door, then turned and curled up beside me. Neither of us looked back. I left them a letter. No return address, no signature flourish, no smiley faces or soft landings. Just truth, printed, folded, and sealed in a plain white envelope. I handed it to the truck driver the day their things were loaded. Slide this on top, I said. He nodded. I imagined them opening it once they reached the drop-off, probably in the driveway, probably surrounded by boxes they didn't bother to pack themselves. Inside, they'd find this. And this house was never yours. Not for a day, not for a moment. You didn't move in, you took over. You didn't ask, you assumed. You didn't honor my space, you erased it. And the worst part, you didn't even notice. You mistook silence for agreement. You mistook kindness for weakness. You mistook proximity for permission. But here's the truth. You never hosted me. I endured you. You weren't my guests. You were my responsibility. And I'm done carrying things no one asked me to hold. Enjoy your new destination. This time, it's yours. But this place, this peace, this life, it's mine. That was all. No threats, no revenge, no explanation, just a mirror handed back to them in black and white. I didn't expect a reply. Didn't want one. Some truths are meant to be read in silence, the same way they were written. Now, the house is quiet. Not the hollow kind of quiet, the kind that feels empty or sad. This is something else. This is peace. The couch has only one blanket draped over it. Mine. My book sits on the armrest where I left it. There's no controller tangled in the cushions, no pizza box balanced on the coffee table. Just space, air, order. The kitchen is clean. My tea is exactly where I left it in the cabinet, second shelf, next to the honey jar I finally had room to buy again. My calendar hangs on the wall, mine, not scribbled over with other people's events. There are no guest stays marked, no borrowed space days, just blank squares and potential. I walk barefoot now. No socks sticking to chips on the floor. No mystery puddles near the sink. No dodging shoes or duffel bags. Just wood beneath my feet. I light a candle every night, not to mask smells, but to mark the moment. The moment this house finally exhaled with me. I play my music as loud or as soft as I want. I leave windows open. I sleep with the door wide. There's no need to defend space that no one is trying to invade. People ask me if I miss them, if things feel too quiet now, if I ever get lonely. I smile, because they never really lived with me. They lived on top of me. And now, for the first time, I'm not buried under someone else's noise. This house may not be big, it may not be new anymore, but every corner holds something I chose. Every room breathes me. It's not just mine on paper. It's mine in presence, in peace, in power. Finally, truly, this is my home.